Gentlemen, welcome to the Be the Man podcasts. I'm your host, Greg Denning, and today is another fantastic day to be alive. I hope you'll make it count. Do something memorable, do something special, really connect with people you love. I'm actually crazy excited because we're taking our kids to the Six Flags water park to celebrate my son's birthday. And so my daughter and my son have a birthday within a week of each other, and so she flew in. My oldest daughter, she flew in, and we've been partying every day. It's like a week-long celebration, and what a blast, what a joy to have all my kids under the same roof again and celebrating each other and celebrating life and just loving on each other and connecting and creating memories, man. Oh, it's all about family life, gentlemen. Please don't ever forget that. I know it's easy to get distracted by work and the things you're working on and all the responsibilities. In fact, it's even easy to get distracted by the responsibilities of family life and forget why we do what we do and how much it matters and how much every interaction matters and how much it matters that you show up and how you show up. And as you guys heard me say this all the time, we absolutely must be responsible for the energy that we bring to the relationships, to the situation, to the gathering, to the experience. So today I'm 100% responsible. I take total ownership for the energy that I bring to the water park for the whole family and showing up and helping. My youngest is 5 and my oldest is 20. So I have a full range of kids. And my wife, right then, and all the energy I bring and how I show up matters so much. And we can wake up each day, fellas, genuinely excited and grateful to be alive. Just waking up in awe and wonder at another chance to do life, another day to be here in this incredible planet. And even when, perhaps especially when we're facing some really challenging things, when life is tough, when you're in the grind and you're right up against this huge challenge that you're pushing on or you're trying to break through, remember what an extraordinary privilege it is to be alive, to be able to do this thing we call life. Oh man, it's so good. All right, so today we're gonna dive into something that I kind of dabbled with years and years ago to try to wrap my head around one specific thing. And so years ago, and it still happens to me, people come and they're like, man, what business should I get in? What career should I get in? Or they're thinking about a career change, or they're unhappy with where they're at. And they're trying to reevaluate career and business, or maybe side hustles or whatever. And they're like, how do I get my head around that? Like what makes it work? And so I started thinking through, this was years ago. In fact, it was when we were living in Costa Rica many years ago. And I was down there saying, okay, what works, what doesn't work? And it was really kind of what's the problem? Like what keeps coming up that's the problem for most people in their career? And what kind of clicked for me was a Venn diagram. And it's VENN. A Venn diagram is, you guys have all seen them. It's where there's a couple of circles, at least 2 circles, and they overlap. And if you get 3 or 4, then they all overlap just enough where you get that sweet spot, right? And so if you can picture in your mind with me, maybe 3 circles or 4 circles, and they all overlap just at this one section. And in that section, that's the sweet spot. That is where the magic happens. That's where you want to operate. And I did this specifically for, a career or a business. And I'll share that with you right now. But then it just kind of really clicked for me. Wow. This is the way to truly understand and nail all of your important roles, is to start with a Venn diagram. Do a Venn diagram for each one so you can get absolute clarity about the simplest and most essential elements of any role. And that way you can get clear about what it is and what it isn't, and then what you have to master. Now, most Most people would never do that, right? We get rolling along through life, and maybe somebody gives us a little bit of direction, or we take a guess at it, but rarely do people do the mental work. You hear the great thinkers and speakers, they talk about like thinking is like the hardest thing in the world. Earl Nightingale used to talk about that. Have you guys listened to it's called The Strangest Secret? Absolutely phenomenal. It's free on YouTube. Just a great recording. I've listened to that probably 50 times or more. Just fantastic. And he says the strangest secret really is that men don't think, and they don't think because thinking is hard. Like real thinking is hard. And most of us avoid the mental work required to get clear. But see, the masters, those who are just absolutely crushing it in their field or whatever that is, or in any area of their life, they've gotten very clear about what matters and what doesn't. They know exactly what has to be done, and they figure out how to do it really, really well. And so we can break that down. And one simple way to start that process, again, this is just a beginning. So we're going to go through a few of them today, and it's just the beginning. We're just getting started, where you're going to have to dig into it really deeply and master what's there. So what I came up with years ago in Costa Rica, I'm like, okay, what has to fit here? And of course, in each role, there's kind of different elements, right? It's quite dynamic, and there's unique aspects to each role. And so you could potentially do a couple or maybe a few Venn diagrams for each role, depending on how you want to approach it and look at it, like the angle. Even if it was like a 3D, I don't even know, is this even possible? Like a 3D Venn diagram, that would be really cool to do a 3D Venn diagram. Somebody can see that, and you can look at it for different angles and see, okay, what's there and where's that sweet spot. So what I came up with initially was it came up with 4 things, and I used the acronym COAL, COAL. And if you hit this, it was the sweet spot of business or career. And the first thing I put in there, C, was conscience, because I kept coming across people, and I had worked in places where it didn't line up with my conscience. I'm like, man, I don't like this. I don't like this product. I wouldn't buy it. I don't like this service. I wouldn't use it. Or it's some kind of thing you're like, no, I don't even think this is like helping humanity. Like, there's no way in the world I could ever work like in video game production, because that would violate my conscience. I just think video games, and this is me, I'm a little hardcore on this. I think video games are an absolute waste of time. And I think they've done a lot of damage in the world. And so I just hate them, and I always have. So for me, working in something, if I got into a career making video games, even if it was lucrative and even if it had a great lifestyle and all these benefits, all these great things, I'm like, no, I can't do that because it's a violation of my conscience. Same with like soda and drinks and candy. I met this guy. He was in Mexico, extremely wealthy and successful candy maker. It's been a generational business for all of Mexico. I'm like, that's awesome, man. Way to go. Like, they built this huge empire. There's no way in the world I could do that. It was just every day I wake up and violate my conscience, like making candy. Cause I'm like, no, man, no sugar for people. I'm going around like no sugar. So you can't do something that violates your conscience, because otherwise you have this daily turmoil. You might be making something that like it just doesn't make the world any better, even if it's not necessarily bad. If you don't love it, if you don't believe in it, if it's not doing good, if it's not really serving people, maybe it's just a inferior product, and you're just trying to sell something is just kind of crap. That just violates conscience, right? So that's the first part of this Venn diagram. The second one was opportunities. O, right? COAL. So opportunities. What are the opportunities that are out there? What are the needs and wants of people, right? What is it they're willing to pay for? Because you might have, and we'll get into, well, A is assets, right? So conscience, opportunity, assets. So your assets are your skills, your knowledge, the things you know or want to know, the things you can do or want to do, the things you can, your skill set, where you can become really, really good at it. And there has to be crossover between the asset and the opportunity, right? So you might be, an example I always give is like, man, you're just an amazing ostrich groomer, and that's your asset. But is there an opportunity in that? Is there a demand for ostrich groomers? You know, I've never seen one ever. Right. But like, you got to find out, is there an opportunity there? So the opportunity again is just like, what are the desires, the wants, the needs, the problems that you bring a solution to? So the problem is the opportunity, your asset is the solution to the problem. And if it's a complicated enough problem, a big enough problem, then people will pay very, very well for that. And so there has to be, and you can see that one, right? That's just the perfect Venn diagram, is what's the opportunity and how does your asset cross over to that opportunity? And it may, but again, that's why I think it's cool. There's a circle, because on the far edge of the circles, all these opportunities, there's tons of things you could do, but it really doesn't cross over. And there might be a lot of things you're actually good at, but that doesn't quite cross over either. It's just that one sweet spot in the middle where the opportunity and your assets just cross perfectly. And you're like, that's it. I found my spot, right? Where what I have to bring to the table is something they are willing to pay for. And so the conscience, opportunities, assets, and then the L is lifestyle. And the reason I threw that one in there, I had to come in because I met so many men, and still do. I meet men all the time that they have this career that is preventing or even wrecking the lifestyle they want. And they never thought through that. This was the big aha. And this is what I want to emphasize today as you're trying to do these Venn diagrams for the roles in your life and the things you want. This one was just, man, when it clicked, I'm like, yes, you have to put lifestyle in there. Because if you just have, okay, it's aligned with my conscience, that's great. Yeah, there's a great opportunity, people paying for it. There's a problem we can bring. There's something people want or need, and I can bring that. And I've got skill set and knowledge base to do it. Boom, I got it. But if you leave out lifestyle piece, well, then you end up like so many men, like they're just working all the time. They're traveling all the time. They're away from their families. They have to live in a place they don't want to live. I mean, I can think of so many examples of good men I've met over the years that have good careers, but they're like, I hate it. I hate my lifestyle. I hate where we live. I'm like, why do you live there? It's because it's where the job is. I'm like, man, you need a different job. Oh, I wish I could be more involved in my have more time with my wife, or be more involved with my kids, or with their education, or I could be at their sports. I wish I could support them more. I'm like, why can't you? Well, it's because my job this. I'm like, there it is. It's a lifestyle piece. And so even if it's a great career or great business, if you don't eventually get it well and quickly, it may not happen right away, but it's got to have a way where you can have the lifestyle you want. And for me, that's a deal breaker. It could be totally aligned with my conscience, be the best opportunity, right aligned with my assets. But if it disrupts the family lifestyle design that I have, I'm out. That's a deal breaker. And done. I'm going to go back to the drawing board and say, nope. And in fact, I even tell people, like, start with lifestyle. What do you want your life to be like? You want to be able to travel? You want to be able to work from anywhere, like true location independence? Do you want to be able to have a totally flexible schedule, to be home for breakfast some days and lunch other days and dinner other days? Or like us, we're like, man, I want 3 meals a day every day with my family for the rest of my life. And so we have that. Like I eat 3 meals a day with my family, and we get to work from wherever. Like I was very, very intentional about, like, I've got to create something, build something, find something that fits the lifestyle piece. And so just going through this mental exercise of like, what are the essential elements? And then when there's that exact crossover in the Venn diagram, bam, I found my sweet spot, right? So having that experience and it just unlocked everything for me. I'm like, man, why aren't we doing that more often? And so today, that's why I wanted to just walk through this. Again, it's just an introduction. I want to invite you to do this. And please do that. Don't just listen to this episode or watch it here and just think, oh yeah, that's good, that's important, and think through a little bit and then move on. I genuinely, and I know some of you are listening while you're running or biking or working or whatever, cleaning, doing chores or driving, but please make time to do this. And it might be in layers, or in, where you go deeper and deeper, and it can get pretty complex and as you'll see here in a minute. It's amazing. It's such a cool process, but do it. Like grab your leather journal and open up a blank page. Some of the the inserts. So I make these journals, these leather journals I have, and because I wanted different sections in my journal for different things. So I'd have one for specifically what we're talking about today, like the roles, right? I'd have one for in my business journal. I have one, marketing and sales is one, and then you could do team members in the other. You could do productivity, effectiveness, efficiency, and then you could have one, a section for family, for personal, whatever it is you want to do. And then I'm like, man, sometimes I want different. Sometimes I want lined paper, and sometimes I want blank. So some of the notebooks, and they're changeable, right? And so some of the insert notebooks are blank, and so I can draw. And then some of them have little grids. They're kind of a dot, the bullet journal style. So they've got dots in them. So I wanted different kinds of journals that I could use for different ideas, right? Because sometimes I want to write, and then sometimes I want to draw and doodle and figure things out. So one of my notebooks is blank. And so I'd open that up, grab any little circle. You could get little bottle caps or just whatever you can find, anything you could use as a template, and then just draw your circles, and then just hit that out and do a whole bunch of them, right? And it's like, go through each role of your life and like, what's essential here? What has to be included? So here's another thing with Business Vitals that I learned from a gentleman named Ethan Willis, and he's leading some big, like $100 million businesses. And he did this one day. He was sitting down, I think it was at lunch somewhere or something, and he grabbed a napkin. He's like, I'm going to just write down the essentials. And we were in a small mastermind with him, and he shared this with us. He's like, really, it comes down to three things. If your business vitals, it's your leads, conversion, and fulfillment. That's it. There's those three. It's like, if you can just monitor leads, conversions, and fulfillment, and then break each of those down, right? You could do a Venn diagram for each of those, right? So business vitals is leads, conversion, and fulfillment. If you're watching those three things, you have a hand on those three things all the time, and you can see like this many leads come in, this is how this many conversions happen, and this is how we fulfill what we've offered. Like, we got that. Like, it's those three things. And so it's a 3-piece Venn diagram to business vitals. So now you take leads and like, okay, what are the absolute elements in leads? And you create a Venn diagram for that. And then for conversions, what has to happen effectively and consistently for really solid conversions and to increase the rate of conversion? And then for fulfillment, what's included in fulfillment? Let's do a Venn diagram there. So you see that you can just break each thing down and put it in there. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it helps you get clarity again on understanding the role and then nailing it. If you know what's essential and what's non-essential, and then you focus in on the essential, like, it's a powerhouse. So the whole triple trifecta, right? The triple trifecta is this concept I came up with after 25 years of studying in human performance and working with thousands of people across 5 continents. Like, what are the bare bone essential elements to being a man? How do we win as men? And a trifecta, of course, is 3 things that work together to win. And so the first trifecta is mind, body, spirit. So there it is. There's a Venn diagram, 3 things. For you as an individual, as a whole being, there's this sweet spot where mind, body, and spirit are all being addressed and all being nourished and cared for, and fitness, right? The first trifecta is fitness, but it's fitness in mind, body, and spirit. When you are fit mentally, spiritually, and physically, there's that sweet spot. Boom. As a being, you are just going to nail it, right? So there's that first trifecta. Well, what you can do again, and I invite you to do this, take each of those and then do a Venn diagram for each of those. So do one for mind. What are the essential elements of mental fitness that you could put into a Venn diagram? For me, it includes learning other languages. There's just something happens in your mind when you're learning other languages that I don't think you can get anywhere else. It's memorizing things. It's reading deeply and broadly, like you're consuming a lot of the great thinkers from different genres. It includes thoughtful conversation and even debate, like you're forming arguments and includes writing. You have to write, right? Like writing is the golden ticket to thinking. Most of us are weak thinkers because we're weak writers. And the more we write, the more it forces us to get our thoughts together. Right. So there's just some of those things. You can keep going with this. Like, what are the essential elements of mind? Do the same thing with body, same thing with spirit. Right? Body, you're going to think, well, man, I got to get my nutrition nailed. You want a six pack? Abs? Your abs are made in the kitchen, man. But then you have to do cardiovascular training and you have to do some weight training and you have to have some flexibility and agility, right? So there's all these elements. You start breaking that down. Same with spirit. So then the next one, the second trifecta, is family. And that breaks down to three, right? And we can do them as a Venn diagram, which is marriage, parenting, and legacy. And we'll do marriage and parenting here in a second, but legacy was, what's in a family legacy for you? And each of these Venn diagrams can look a little different for each one of us. But that's what's so cool. Like you're going to feel a certain emphasis, certain calling. Some of you just feel like, yeah, that's my calling. That's my song. That's the thing I want to do. And maybe it's from background. If your parents failed at something or you had some life experiences that just really brought it to the surface, you're going to focus in on something maybe I wouldn't. And I'll focus on something maybe you wouldn't. And that's fantastic. That's what makes the world great. But you have to get clear. It's like, what's in your Venn diagram? What matters? So here's a couple of thoughts for legacy even. You have to have one of the elements is a really long-term vision. Rachel and I are constantly talking about our kids and grandkids and great grandkids, right? Like we don't even have grandkids yet. None of our kids are even close to marriage. And yet we're constantly thinking about like, hey, grandkids, right? Not to the neglect of our children, but like this is legacy stuff. You have to have the standard of excellence. And everybody has to buy into the standard of excellence. If you're going to create a legacy, you have to set a standard and you have to be so effective that people and your kids, especially your family, the whole family buys in. Like, yeah, we're in. We want the legacy. We want to hold the standard. And you have to have love and respect because you'll never have a legacy if people don't respect you. And the legacy won't last if people don't love you because they'll despise you and resent you. So those are just a couple elements, right? If you just start digging into that and then you go through and start thinking through it. And next week, I'll release another episode. It's the 3-column strategy is what we'll dive into. And it's a way to go through now every single element here. And it's this really awesome way that I learned from one of my coaching clients of how to assess what's working, what's not, how to establish excellence in each thing. But let's go to the next one. So the third trifecta is finances, right? Which is income, expenses, and investments. And so again, picture in your mind a Venn diagram, and you can draw it in your journal. You could do it on a computer graphics, whatever. Those of you know how to work the software, and you go pull that together. So you're going to have your income, you're going to have your expenses and your investments, and then where they cross over, everything lines up really well. Each one of those is nailed. That's your sweet spot. That's where power is happening in the financial trifecta. Isn't this stuff awesome? And you start to see how it's working and you can see the essential elements, and then you break each one of those down. What's the Venn diagram for income? What has to be included there? For expenses, what has to be included there? For investments. So for investments, maybe one of them would be risk. How risky is it? And how much risk are you willing to take on? The other one's liquidity. I know a lot of investors, man, they great investments, but they can't get access to it. Like I've known of investors that are worth millions and millions of dollars, and they get cash broke. They have no money. Like crap, I'm in trouble here. I have no money, and they have millions of dollars invested because they don't have liquidity. Or are they cash producing assets? Right, that's an important aspect. Some of them you just put in, and you won't be able to touch that for a really long time. And others you need to put in like, okay, this one's cash producing. Like it'll generate monthly money we need or however quarterly, whatever. What's the ROI on it? Obviously, that's your return on your investment. What's the timing? Is the timing right in the economy? Is the timing right for the whole process of the investment? Is it short term, long term? Is it going to fit? What about exit strategies? Right? Those are just some simple things that come to mind, and you just go through each of these things. So let's kind of quickly do this together. Again, in your mind, you're going to have all kinds of great ideas. Some of you have way better ideas than I have. But do this. Please, please, please do this. Go through and see every aspect, every role as a Venn diagram. Like, what are the essential elements here? And again, I have to keep reemphasizing this. Once we get down to what's essential and we focus on what's essential, man, we get way better results. So let's do marriage. So in marriage, as you start thinking about some of the things you might include, and again, yours may look different than mine, but I want to be best friends with Rachel. So it's friendship, and we are. And then attraction, right? Attraction is this super critical element. So you start thinking about that. You're like, attraction. Yeah, I have to keep up attraction. Sometimes we start with attraction and then we, if you or your spouse let yourself go, like maybe you've let yourself go. Maybe you kind of slouched into the sloth looking dad bod. Not sexy, man. Not attractive. Maybe you picked up some bad habits. Maybe you're kind of grumpy or unpleasant to be around, or you don't take care of yourself. You don't dress up anymore. You're just kind of sloppy looking. Not cool, man. Not cool. So attraction is that element, right? There has to be that element, that's a magnetic spark. And some of you are like, no, it doesn't matter. That's just superficial. Let's move beyond that. Well, attraction has many, many layers, right? And there's a lot of depth. In fact, I tell Rachel all the time, like some of the things that I'm most attracted to her about is like her intellect and her goodness and her character and her standard of excellence. That's super attractive, super sexy, right? The thinking, the learning, how she's chasing self-improvement and mastery and so many things. That's just so attractive. But she's also very physically attractive. And that's what differentiates the marriage. That's what makes a little spark of magic there. So it has to be part of it for us. Connection and intimacy. And intimacy, sex is its own thing, because sex is that piece, that linchpin that we call it, that's unique only to your marriage. And that has to be great. That in and of itself, sex has to be amazing. But the intimacy and the connection really has to be there too, or the sex won't be great. And to be intimate is like to, I had a guest on who's going to publish here soon. He threw out the word intimacy, into me, you see, right? And that's what intimacy is. Just open up the barriers to really see each other wholly. It just everything as you are, all of it. That's intimacy and connection. It has to be there. And a lot of people don't have that. A lot of couples we're working with, we're coaching a lot, they don't have that. They keep up these barriers. They keep their own spouse at a distance. And they have these interesting mindsets and habits and patterns and ideas and beliefs about, no, I'm going to keep you at a distance for some reason, right? And so they don't have the intimacy, they don't have the connection. So of course they don't have the good sex either, and it just cascades over to all other kinds of problems. Another element of an awesome marriage is family management. You guys have to figure out how to run a family. And if you don't figure out how to run a family together, like the transactional type things, get stuff done, man, it has an effect on your marriage. You really struggle. Dream chasing is another thing for us. That's another essential element there in our Venn diagram. As an extraordinary marriage, we're going to chase dreams together. All right, let's switch gears. Fatherhood. What are the essential elements in fatherhood? And again, ideas are going to come to you. Write them down, jot them down. Like, make time for this. Like, what if the Venn diagram? What's the Venn diagram for being an awesome, awesome father? And I'm going to buzz through these. There's a bunch of things here, but like, you just start throwing connection. Got to really connect to your kids. Love. Increase your capacity to love your kids. And if, like, the saddest thing I see is like when fathers are struggling to love their kids. That breaks my heart. It's super sad. And if your kids are annoying or distant or frustrating, like, in all honesty, man, you've created part of that. You played a role in that. And it takes a lot of humility to bring that back. In fact, I just listened to a true story yesterday. It was gut wrenching. This couple brought their daughter to a renowned psychologist to help her with. She had anorexia, I think, and it was a severe eating disorder, and she was dying. And the parents were like, "Well, it's her problem. It's her problem." And the psychologist gets in the family, starts meeting with the parents, and she's like, Here's the problem. And she works out the whole story. And it was predominantly, it was the dad's behaviors. It was his issues, his stuff, his mannerisms, his way of trying to quote parent were directly causing all the problems. And this is in the book called The Choice, and she outlines the whole thing, and a true story, like this, all this stuff. And it was the dad, man. He was the catalyst for all kinds of behavior problems in his family and his children. And for this girl and her anorexia, that her anorexia was just a reaction to his really poor parenting. And so, man, we got to lean into that one. We got to make sure we are being the kind of man, the caliber of man and father, husband, that we can love our kids and they can love us. Do your kids deeply, deeply love you? Do they want to be around you? Do they admire you and respect you? Man, this stuff matters so much. Another element of fatherhood is, of course, mentoring and coaching, and doing that very effectively. The other one's leading and modeling, and then investing in them and the things they want to do and in their future. I mean, so many things. So, and then there's a lot of specific roles. So here, I'm just going to give a list here of specific things, because you might start going through this, and hopefully your mind already is just running like, wow, what about this? And what about that? And what are the circles in this part of my life? And so you can get into really specific roles. I know some of you are dentists. What are the essential elements in a Venn diagram of being a really great dentist? A chiropractor, a surgeon, a physician, a marketer, a manager, a speaker, like speakers. Really great speakers are super dynamic. They're actually funny, right? They bring in humor. They're great storytellers, right? So you could go through these and just break them down. Disciple. What's the Venn diagram for you being a disciple, a believer, a son, a brother, a friend, a philanthropist? Love that one. And that, and scholar. So philanthropist and scholar, those are elements we have inside the masterclass that I address. Like, we all need to be philanthropists. Well, what is it? What's in the Venn diagram of being a truly exceptional philanthropist? What's essential there? And if we can get clear about that, then we can nail it. So being a scholar, being a provider, a protector, a listener, a supporter, like, and I'm suggesting all these as roles that you can do a Venn diagram for each one of these. Like, what makes a great listener? What makes a great supporter? A creator, an artist, a musician, a designer, an organizer, a warrior, a philosopher, a poet, a thinker, an author, because some of you want to write, martial artists. What makes a really great martial artist? What's the Venn diagram for martial artists? An athlete, a mentor, an influencer. Do that one, please. Mentor and influencer. Like, what's the Venn diagram to be a truly exceptional influencer? That's one of the key things I focus in on a lot when I'm doing one-on-one coaching. Like, you have to earn influence, and there's a specific formula for that. Because if you don't have influence in your life, man, it's so much harder and more miserable than it needs to be. Got to learn how to be a great influencer, and there's a Venn diagram for that. How about a teacher, right? Every one of us is a teacher. Every single one of us is a teacher in so many different ways. And what are the essential elements of a teacher? Well, one of them is your way of being. There's a phenomenal book called The Courage to Teach by Parker Palmer. I highly recommend for everybody. And he really illustrates in there so well. It's like, no matter what your subject, what your topic, none of us can escape teaching who we are. So you could be teaching chemistry or marketing, but who you are is what comes out, right? It's your way of being that is reflected in the teaching, no matter what the topic or the subject, right? So one of those circles in the Venn diagram of being a great teacher is your way of being. Being an exemplary student, right? If you're going to be a great teacher, you've got to be a great student. You got to be a master storyteller, just like speakers and teachers. Human beings, man, we love stories. Stories just work to illustrate principles. So if you want to be a great teacher, you got to be a great storyteller. How about provider? What's in provider? And again, I'm just throwing ideas here. You got to do this and get this dialed in for you. But as a provider, what's in the Venn diagram as a provider? An abundant mindset. Too many good men are operating with a severe scarcity mindset. This one comes up a lot, gentlemen. This one comes up a lot. Usually in the form of wives reaching out to us saying, help, like there's so many things we could do, but my husband has such a scarcity mindset. And I get it, man. I've been there. I was there for a long time. I grew up with that, and then I was dead broke. I was homeless. So I know what scarcity actually is, and I got into a scarcity mindset. But you can't be a great provider if you have a scarcity mindset. So you got to have an abundance mindset. You got to be a producer. What does that even mean, right? You do provider, and you do your Venn diagram, and in one of them is producer. And you're like, ooh, now I'm going to take that one out. So if I go producer, what's the Venn diagram for being a producer? You've got to produce results and resources. Right? Ooh, resourcefulness. That's another one I'd add here. Being resourceful to be effective and productive. If you're going to be a great provider, you have to be effective and productive. You got to be organized and detailed. You got to be really great at what you do. If you're just mediocre, you're going to have a hard time providing. You have to be agile and creative. And again, when we say provider, it's more than just providing finances. Sometimes, especially as men, we're like, yeah, I'm a provider here. And we think it's more like you're an ATM. You're providing way, way more than just money. And so you've got to be agile and creative to provide, well, and opportunities, right? One of the things I put in here in my Venn diagram for provider is I'm an opportunity maker. I make opportunities. I go out and create opportunities. So I'm providing opportunities, and then providing guidance, providing support, providing mentoring. I mean, there's so much to it. This is so cool. This stuff just expands and expands. A king, right? Every single one of you is a king in your kingdom. At least you should be. Some of us are not leaning into that role and responsibility. We're not sitting on a throne. We're sitting in the bleachers watching life happen. And we're sitting back in the corner, hiding with our fingers crossed, hoping things work out. We're not being the king. Be the king in your kingdom, which means you're responsible for everything that happens. You don't have to do everything that happens. You don't have to, some of us get into this like, well, if it's going to be done, you have to do it yourself. I'm like, nah, it's not true. It's not true. You have to be a more effective leader. So in fact, if you're going to do a Venn diagram for king, I think that would be a big one. There's a few in here. I'm like, yeah, please do that one. That's one of them. Do one for a king. Some of the things I wrote down under the king is like extreme ownership, right? And there's a great book called Extreme Ownership, which I highly recommend. But just absolute ownership. You are responsible for every result in your kingdom. Be responsible for it. Take responsibility. Oversight. Right? A great king has oversight. He can see everything that's going on in his kingdom. And he understands what's going on and why. He's watching it. He has vision. The vision of where he's taking and where he's leading. He can see clearly. It's way beyond, what everyone's worried about, and the drama and the stuff and looking down, right? Kings aren't walking around with their heads down like the what's called the muck raker. Right, the muck raker always had his head down, just raking the muck, and his head was always down. He never looked up. He had no vision. Kings have vision. Kings delegate, and they do it very well. They delegate. They have wisdom. How do you earn wisdom? What's the Venn diagram for wisdom? They have judgment. They have benevolence. So there's all kinds of things, right? Now, a Venn diagram doesn't work if you've got 20 things. Right? There's too many. Then it makes the teeny little sweet spot that like it's impossible to hit. It's like an impossible target. But you make out a list and you write down things and you're like, okay, what's essential? What's the bare bones essential? How do go through the mental work to get down to the simplest, most essential elements? And so you might write out a list and then just kind of hone that down, and includes, pieces of them will kind of all fit together, and you kind of bring that in. It's like, there it is. There's my Venn diagram for each important role in my life. And this is a simple exercise, right? It's kind of elementary, but it's actually quite challenging. And most people don't do this kind of mental work. They won't sit down and just work through like what it takes mentally, because your mind's like, I don't know. And it's like, well, what's for lunch? What are we gonna do tomorrow? Oh, I have that problem to do. Oh, I gotta. And so the mind's like, it'll race off to other things. And you got to keep it there. Like, no, I'm gonna stick with this. What are the essential elements for me to fulfill my roles? And how do I nail it? And I would propose, fellas, that we can't nail it. We can't have that unbelievable success until we know what's essential and what's not. And for me, this has just been a really cool exercise to just zero it down. Like, okay, these are the essential elements. And if I can get down to 3 or 4, and then I can draw them out and I can see where they cross over, I'm like, there it is. I can just totally nail this as a man, as a warrior, as a husband, as a father. I can nail that because I know what's essential and what's not. And then I can look at my calendar, I can look at my schedule, I can look at my habits, and I can see what's working. Because none of us lives at the level of our hopes, fellas. We live at the level of our habits. That's worth repeating. We do not live at the level of our hopes. We live at the level of our habits. And so once you have your Venn diagram dialed in, you can look, say, do my habits align with this? Because some of you have habits that are way over here in left field. And then you put your Venn diagram together. You're like, man, these are the things that would make me such a great father. And these are the things I'm doing. Right. And that's where you start realigning your whole schedule, your whole plan, your habits, your patterns, everything you're doing, and bring that back into alignment. Anyways, hope this is helpful. It's just one more element, right? Succeeding in life is a very, very, very multifaceted thing. And we have to be good at a lot of things. But if you'll pick your essential roles and get clear about what those are, and then zoom in and what are the essential elements in each role, and then even zoom in one more layer. What are the essential things in that thing? And then, like I told you, next week we'll talk about the 3-column strategy. And the key here is like just getting more strategic, being more serious about this, and doing the mental work first to get clear about what it means to really succeed. So, I love this stuff. And I can't think of anything more important than being the best version of yourself and leaning into the things that matter most. I've been hired to go speak to an event out in Colorado, and been thinking about that and writing the speech, and just so excited about it. This is that essential element, like getting down to the essentials of truly living an extraordinary life and being the best version of yourself. Man, it's so awesome. So, fellas, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for striving to be great men. Thanks for caring. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do that so you can keep getting the new updates. I have so many interviews already that I've already done of men who are doing incredible things and great conversations and inspiring insights and stories from their lives. So those are already coming out every week. You're going to get a new interview from a gentleman doing amazing things. So subscribe to the podcast, leave a review so you can help spread this, and up to 5 stars on there. Connect with me, reach out to me through social media. It's Greg.Denning on Instagram or Gregory Denning on Facebook. Ask questions there. I'm happy to do podcast episodes on your questions, and reach out and share. If you have some insights and breakthroughs when you're doing your Venn diagram, things that pop for you, share them with me. I'd love to hear and see what you come up with, what stands out for you, and share those with me. And then, share this episode and this podcast with friends and families, colleagues. You think, yeah, man, let's discuss this. Share it with your team. Right. This one specifically, you share it with your team. Like, hey, each of us has a role here in a team. So whether you're running a business or a sports team or some kind of organization, a humanitarian effort, whatever it is, and you're in charge of that, or you're a part of it, say, man, let's listen to this episode and let's do this exercise all together. Each of us has a role inside the team. And so the team has its own Venn diagram, and then each person has a role inside the team, and they do a diagram, and you break that down, you go like 3 levels in, right? Then we all get clarity on how to understand and nail it in each important role of our lives. So thanks for being here, fellas. Be the man.